Thanks, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's really exciting to see so many people register to hear about Speak Up Diversity, what we're doing and our work, and how we can make sure that there's more diversity in our organizations and diversity at the decision-making level. So I am Haddy, Njie, and I have my co-presenter, Mwangi, who is an advisor to Speak Up Diversity. So she is heading diversity and inclusion in her organization, but she sacrifices her time to support us. So thank you, Anne, for being here with me. What I want to do very quickly is just to share with you the agenda for today, for the hour we have from 1 o'clock till 2 o'clock. So what I want to do is, for my part, is spend about 10 minutes or so just to talk about who we are and why do we exist, and some insightful statistics, because I think it's really good to say this is what we are doing, but why are we doing it? So we've got some backed up evidence to demonstrate to you that this work is really essential, not just for us now, but also for the next generation. So we can have much more equal playing field and more equality and equity for all of us really in the UK. We'll then spend about 15 minutes or so just to have an interactive session. There are 2 questions. As Sarah said, we will break you into between 4, depending on how many people we have, into 4 groups. And we'll get your thoughts following the interactive session, but I'll share with you what that interactive session will look like. And then finally, we have Mwangi, who will explain and share her personal and personal and professional perspectives. Is very powerful, very insightful, and I think it will create an impact. And then finally, we will share with you the work we have started doing with the Wilberforce Trust, with the brilliant leader, Philippa. I'm sure she's here somewhere. Hi, Philippa. And then we will summarize, and then hopefully we'll have some time to take some questions. I know you're all muted, but if there is any burning questions or points that you want to share, please raise your hand. I think there's a raising hand somewhere, or just go to the chat and then send me a question. So
raise hands. So yeah,
raise hands.
Just we'll keep a lookout. We'll keep a lookout for everybody raising their hands.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so who we are, Speak Up Diversity. So it's a grassroots BAME-led organization based in the city of York. It is set up and led by myself, but we have 6 brilliant people working with us as well. They've also sacrificing their time, their resources, and their skills and knowledge to help us really tackle the root causes of structural and systemic racism in the city of York and beyond. So yes, we're based in York, but we're just not really doing the work in York. We're looking the UK wide. And I think the reason why we really want to focus on the root causes is that we really think that's fundamentally where we can really solve the problems, and then hopefully in the long term have a much more equal society for everyone. I believe in raising voices up, going to the protests, but I think really doing some strategic work is really important. And in doing so, we've identified 4 key strategic solutions. The first one is diversity in policy and decision making. So I mentioned our work with the Wilberforce Trust. We are going into organizations, supporting them in how we can create a much more diverse environment at the board level, the senior management level, and across the organization. But we're also looking to set up a BAME network where we can look at policies and work with the local councils in challenging number of policies which are not creating an equal playing ground for everyone. So there are 2 aspects to the diversity in policy and decision making. Education and awareness, we're working with preschools and schools to help them have more diverse curriculums and teachings and storytelling to our kids. Policy solutions, we're working with the healthcare sector, in policing, in education, to make sure that there are really, again, equal playing ground for everyone. And we want to start right at the beginning when our children start going to schools. And finally, this is the long-term goal for the Speak Up Diversity, is the racial incidents in our workplaces and in our schools. So Anne will talk about microaggressions, but when you go to your workplace or to your school, people of color are really being affected by these issues, and there isn't any mechanism or a safe environment where we can allow people to share their experiences and they are believed, but also something will be done about it. So these are our 4 key strategic initiatives we are working on for now and in the future. So this is who we are. But why do we exist? Why are we doing the work? And I think it's a fair question. We've outlined about 5 bullet points of some statistics, evidence that really shows that we do not have an equal society between Black and white people, or people of color and white people. Some examples: the prosecution and sentencing rates for Black people are 3 times higher than white people. Not long ago, The Guardian produced a report saying that Black men experience stop and search 40 times more often than white men. If you finish university and you have a degree, Black graduates earn 23.1% less on average than white graduates. And Black students experience permanent exclusion from education 3 times higher than white students. And finally, when we look at the employment side of things, the BAME people are twice higher to be in unemployment than their white counterparts. So I think this is just a brief summary, just to really show you, give you some insight of the level of inequalities we have in the education sector, in the policing sector, and in the employment side of things. So I think the evidence is clear why we need Speak Up Diversity, especially in York. York is a beautiful place, but it's not as diverse. And I think we have some real deep-rooted issues. So we really want to tackle the strategic issues with some real actionable solutions. So this is who we are and why we are doing the work. But let's look at the charity sector. How about the charity sector? What does that look like? So I'm trying to just scroll this up. There we are. So this is really, I was really surprised and actually disappointed to see this. And I hopefully you will all agree with the statistics. So just some evidence and some insight. 80% of senior leadership teams have no ethnic minority representation. And I think this is worrying for myself and hopefully for Anne, because when we look at the charity sector, we have employees who are diverse, I'm sure. We also have, in the community side of things, we also want to reach the BAME communities and also the white communities, but all people. But at the leadership level, there isn't any representation of people that we are also serving or we are responsible for, who are working to make the charity to be a better organization. But the second bullet point, let's look at that one. Only 16% of charities had BAME people on their leadership board. Only 16%. And among the trustees, 6.6 were from the background. So if you look at the trustees and the senior level, there isn't really equal or fair representation. And women of color, they face a much more difficulty. There's a double barrier. They're comprised of 2.9% for the trustees and 2.5% of senior leadership. I know currently, as it stands, at the senior level, you find more men, more white men, and more middle-aged white men. So you have less women, but even more disappointing, less women of color at that level. And just to conclude on this slide, these findings came from the Inclusive Boards report in 2018. then they've actually summarized that the charity boards are less diverse than UK's biggest companies. So you think about the FTSE 100, the FTSE 250, the charity sector is less diverse than all other sectors and biggest companies. So I think there's real opportunity for us to really work in the charity sector and really help to make sure that we have a much more diverse and a positive change for all your employees and your consumers and your residents. So we know what the issues are, we know what the challenges are. And for Speak of Diversity, how do we work with organizations to tackle these problems and these challenges that you may encounter in your organization? We have created and developed something called the 3P model: people, purchasing, and philanthropy. Although this is our framework, it's very flexible. So every organization is different, and we are really we are committed to going into organizations and trying to make sure we use this model, but make sure it fits within your values and what you're trying to achieve. But essentially, this model will help us to work with organizations in identifying areas of diversity that they want to focus on, which will lead to a much more diverse and positive environment for the betterment of your employees, your customers, your residents, your clients. And just to very quickly touch on the people side of things, the people, we look at the structures across all the organizations, from the trustees, from the board level, from the senior management level, and even down to your support workers. So we look at, and I think basically the question we really like to ask is, do we have the right people making the right decisions? And if you look around and then you don't see representation, then I think we have a challenge, because we really don't have the right people then to speak up for people of color, to speak up people who have disability, to speak up with people who are from the LGBTQ plus society. So we really need to be asking that question: do we have the right people at the board level making the right decisions for everyone? Purchasing. How do we use our influence and power to make sure that we have the right policies when we procure our work, our suppliers, or any activities that we must do to support the organization and also to support our stakeholders? Who are you doing business with? Are they diverse? Do they come from different societies or different communities or different areas? I think that's one question that we ought to ask ourselves, and we can help you with that. And finally, the philanthropy. I think a challenge will come to me and say, actually, Haddy, in what we do, we don't do philanthropy, and we can change that. So for Wilberforce Trust, we've changed this to be project suppliers. So how do we work with some suppliers? And I think there are other organizations in the charity sector that also work in terms of donations and grants. We can also look at how we do that. How are you applying your grants to? Are they diverse? Are they people from really disadvantaged and from people from BAME communities? So this is our model that really enables us to work with organizations so that we can have, we can start looking at the problems and also come with really identifiable and actionable recommendations and policies. But we'll show you some examples that we've started working with the Wilberforce Trust. I'm going to stop there. I think hopefully I have shared with you who we are, why we're doing this, the challenges in the charity sector, and our model that will help us to really work with the charity sector. It doesn't matter of size, it doesn't matter what you're doing. We can come in there and really start the conversations and have a dialogue in how we can make sure we have a diversity at the board level. But I really want to stop there because I mentioned the interactive session, because we really want to get your valuable thoughts. You are leading organizations and you are part of organizations that have a number of challenges. So Sarah's going to help us to have a group of 4, depending on the number of people we have today. But the questions are this. The Black Lives Matter movement has pushed diversity onto the board agendas. My organization, we're talking about that. Every organization, I think, are talking about is talking about that. But we really want to ask you two simple questions. The first one is, what are your impressions of the issues raised by the Black Lives Matter movement and diversity at the board level? So what do you think of diversity of the board level? What are your impressions and what the issues are? And the bigger question for us, and to get your thoughts and insight on this, is how is it relevant to your organization? Do you think there's a need to have diversity at your board level, given that what you are doing is very important to you and to your community? So these are the questions that we would like you to think about. About 15 minutes or so. So around past, we will come back and then we'll get your thoughts, and then we will move on to Anne's powerful personal and professional experience and share that with you. So this is my part, and I hope that was really quick, succinct, and insightful. And yeah, happy to take any questions for the last few minutes. If not, Sarah, would be fantastic if you can help us with the breakout rooms.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Haddy. That's fantastic. And I think if I'm going to split you into 5 rooms, hopefully, if it works okay. And it would be great if you could discuss amongst yourselves the 2 questions and appoint a spokesperson to come back and report on what you've discussed, what you've concluded. That would be amazing. There's only 3 of us, so we can't go in all of the rooms, but we'll kind of float about between the rooms. So what will happen is I'll create the rooms and you'll just be redirected, and then in 15 minutes, so just after past, I will bring it back in. So just to be clear, and just to make the point, the slides, if you want, we can send them out afterwards and they can be made more accessible for people that haven't been able to see the slides. Please do get in touch with Vision Room. We can send them out afterwards. So there's 2 questions. What are your impressions of the issues raised by Black Lives Matters and diversity at the board level? And then the second question, is that relevant for your organisation? So it's about boards and diversity and the relevance to your organisation. So I will now create the breakout rooms and we'll see you in 15 minutes. Has that worked?
It looks like it, yes.
Okay, so it looks like, oh, there's people still
Jeff and Gil
here that are maybe just joining. So it's, I'll just put Jeff in. Jeff, are you able to click join into the waiting room? Oh, there we go. Becca? I don't know why Becca's not being able to join. Now, do you want me to put you into a room, Haddy?
Yes, I don't mind, yes.
So I think, how do I do that? Hang on. Haddy, right, here you are. So I'll move you. Oh, you've just not clicked join, I don't think, Haddy.
Do I not? Oh.
So you just need to click join.
I cannot see it. I haven't got the option to join or
Move
not.
to, right, okay, I'll just put you in room 4. So you should. You're a co-host, so I think you should be able to. Does there nothing come up on your screen that says?
No. Or maybe I can, let's see, I can join, it says join breakout room. So I think I can
so just click on join.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll see you. I'll close the rooms in 15 minutes, Haddy. Hello.
Hi everyone.
Hi, Haddy.
I think we were having a very interesting chat, and then right in the middle of it, it cut us off.
Oh, really? Sorry, yeah. I gave a sort of 2-minute warning, but it.
Yes, no, it was really engaging. But I'm sure my group and Carl will further that discussion. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, thank you.
So have we got everyone in the room? Back in the room? Yes, we should.
I think we have. Yes, we have.
Okay, so just to spend the next 10 minutes or so, between 5 to 10 minutes or so. So Sarah, remind me, how many groups did we have? Was it 4?
We had 5 groups.
5.
Yeah.
Okay. So for each group, would someone mind just sharing their thoughts on the 2 questions and what their observations or thinking were on the 2 questions?
You'll have to unmute yourselves. Whoever's going to speak, could you have the ability to unmute yourself?
Shall I start? Otherwise, we might be waiting for a long time, and then like 10 people will come in at once. So in terms of the questions, then yes, we all kind of see and recognise the importance of the BLM movement and how that has kind of provoked discussions across the sector. We're all probably at slightly different places, the organisations that were involved. So just to let people know, so it's Guide Dogs, Wilberforce Trust, who've obviously been doing some work in this area already, and Barrow Blind Society, probably a slightly smaller organisation. And I think Carl said that they have 1 member of staff from the BAME community. But even at Wilberforce, those staff are kind of mainly in caring roles, so not particularly kind of high up in the organisation. So we're all kind of committed to the agenda, perhaps are needing to share ideas as to how we increase representation at all levels, particularly at board level, but amongst staff. So the importance of having maybe targets and some form of affirmative action. So this isn't a tokenistic exercise. This is about getting really serious about the agenda. Another thing that we discussed was ensuring that organisations do invest in this. So don't just assume that people with lived experience can be tapped into as a free resource. But as with any other experts or consultants out there, that maybe organisations need to look at investing in that. And just we need more time. We could have done with another 2 hours, I reckon, to discuss that. But I don't think I missed. If I missed anything, then others from that group feel free to chip in. Otherwise, pass on to the next group, I guess.
I would
Thanks,
group 2. I seem to have got vaulted in at the very last minute as everything shut down. So please, everybody else, jump in if that wasn't the case. So very quickly, it was felt, some feedback from one member of the group felt that actually COVID had taken more centre stage and had knocked the Black Lives Movement matter off the agenda a little bit, because everybody was scrambling around to reconfigure as a result of COVID. Some really, really interesting stuff about inclusive leadership, about making sure that leaders have objectives that take them out of their comfort zones, and that people, so streams of work or themed groups such as ethnicity, women's groups. So an ethnicity group was have somebody white leading it. The women's group would have a man leading it, etc., to challenge the thinking, and do that reverse mentoring, which I really liked. There was an issue about understanding what privilege is, and actually, the kind of white middle class members of the senior management team or the board understand what privilege is and acknowledge it in order to move on and embrace change and diversity. And then there was another piece about understanding the organisation, understanding some of the sensitive particular issues that may affect people from BAME communities. So as an example, how has an organisation acknowledged that the Black Lives Matter movement might have affected some of their staff who were from BAME communities? So
and just to say, Stuart, didn't we? We had the whole issue about there was a lot of commitment in the group, but how do we get into it? What could be some of the hooks, and someone suggested working with, not necessarily partnership with, but working alongside other BAME organisations, I guess, like Association of African Caribbeans and Association of Blind Asians, in this particular context. And someone gave a really good example, didn't they, of senior managers writing to all people about when they knew there'd been flood in the Philippines because they had a lot of Filipino nurses. So it's about almost picking up sensitivities, if you can do that, really.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart.
Is the next group 3?
Yeah, I think that's me.
Have you finished, Stuart? Stuart, had you finished? Yeah. Thank you.
Hi.
Go on, Gemma.
Hi, right, yes, so I'm from the organisation My Sight Nottinghamshire. I'm on the board of trustees there. So between our group, we were talking about sort of the situation of quite a lot of the boards might not be very diverse, but also our experiences that not some of the end users of our services aren't necessarily diverse either, and perhaps debating what the chicken and egg situation, what came first, and that actually both things need to be tackled. But we were saying that obviously a board being representative will then help the organisation become more diverse, because people need to see that an organisation represents them, or they're not going to be engaging with that organisation. So obviously we talked about how important that is, therefore, to have a really diverse board. A couple of us were saying that as sight loss charities, our priority with the board had been to ensure that there's representation from people with lived experience of visual impairment. So I know for our board, we've really made sure that we have that at any one time. We need to have that representation. So that's been the priority up till now. But of course, having the Black Lives Matter campaign very much in the forefront of everyone's minds at the moment, it has meant that the conversations are now happening to get the diversity sort of on all levels as well. So yeah, the conversations are happening, but I think I know we haven't necessarily have time to act on that yet, and the priority has been, you know, for people with visual impairments. So yeah.
Okay.
I think
Thanks,
that's the point.
Thanks, Gemma.
Yeah. If anyone else wanted to add to it, feel free.
Group 4. Have we got somebody from Group 4?
I think we were Group 4. Sorry, the group I was part of was Group 4, isn't it, Carl?
I didn't notice the number. All I know is I went into a group.
Well, there should be 2 more groups, I think, to report back on.
So we were Group 5. So shall we live on the edge?
Yeah.
So in Group 5, we all agreed that Black Lives Matter had been a catalyst for our organisations to some degree or another. For us at Guide Dogs, it was the thing that made the board and the execs reflect on the grade they'd previously had a DEI lead role at, and to jack that up and put it out to a much more senior level, and I secured that role. So that was back in August. So that was really driven by Black Lives Matter movement, bringing the lack of diversity in guide dogs to a bit of a sharp focus, really, so that they felt they needed to act on that. I think there is that we all agreed that was that had been a catalyst within our organisations, and we did have a conversation about what comes first, whether it's making the organisation more diverse or attracting in more diverse customers, so that you then one reflects the other, and kind of which comes first, the chicken or the egg. And we all had slightly different experiences of that within our organisation. For us at Guide Dogs, I think we very much have took the view that the organisation needs to be fit for purpose in terms of being diverse and inclusive, and then that will make it credible and relevant to communities that we don't currently reach out to. And some others have been trying to attract in new customers first, with a view to then shaking up their board and senior leadership team from there. So I don't know necessarily that there was, you know, a consensus on which was the best, just that it was different approaches to doing it. And I think we all felt that, yeah, it was extremely relevant to our organisations. Ultimately, within the voluntary sector, we're all here to serve a community base, whether it be based on visual impairment or anything else, and therefore the organisation needs to be reflective of the community it serves. So yeah, for all of us, we felt it was completely relevant. Did anyone want to add anything?
No, all good. Okay, so shall we have the final group before we get to Anne's section?
I'll probably go ahead. So I think the general consensus was that BLM and diversity is important to have. Various discussions were taking place. So a personal example was given in terms of diversity being at board level, and how that was cascaded down to staff, then volunteers, and then service users. And it became attractive to service users to see that they are being represented in various different ways. There was another example whereby, if I am correct by saying this, please do correct me wrong, whoever this was, that they don't actually have a board within their organisation. It's more as an overall kind of national organisation, I believe, and there's still work to be done when it comes to diversity. And it's the knowing how to do that, which came to a discussion. How do we become more diverse as an organisation? How do we relate our services to other ethnic groups such that fall within BAME? And as well as it being diverse from board level, we also did look at community. It's important to go out into the community to share our services, to share what we do, and, you know, as well as sharing what we do, could that also open up opportunities for recruitment to advertise people from BME communities as well? Yeah. So overall discussion is that there's still room for improvement for those who are maybe doing it well, and for those who still need to learn how to become more diverse as an organisation. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Okay, well, thank you all for that. That was really insightful. I think there's so much in that discussion. But I think there are a few questions that I've jotted down, which are very fair. you know, there was a question in my group. Yes, we know that we need more diversity at the board level, but how? How do we get the people? How do we get people from BAME communities? Someone also made a question on how do we make the board, do we make the board more diverse first and then, you know, the community or the customers? And Natasha, to your last point, your question, how if we don't have a board level, how do we make sure that we have a diverse organization and community, or bringing the communities from different diverse communities? So fundamentally, we're talking about internal and external issues, isn't it? And this is something that we've started working with the Wilberforce Trust to. Our proposals were internal and external. And Anne, I'll just pass on to Anne. We are a bit late. We've got about 20 minutes or so. Anne will now share her personal and professional perspectives, and then talk about some of the examples that we are currently working with the Wilberforce Trust, and then we will summarize. Is that okay with you all? Good. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
You want to put back the PowerPoint?
Yes. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Just waiting for it.
Can you see it? Can you all see it?
No,
yet.
No, it's not there.
No.
Let me share it.
This is, yeah, good. Sarah, good thing that we share the slides with you. So there we are.
Right. Okay. Just give me a second. Give me a second. Oh, seems to be all over the place. Oh, can't see it. Something has gone wrong. It's sharing the PowerPoint, but it's not there.
Hang on.
It's shared the website, no, the PowerPoint.
For some reason, yeah, hang on.
Is it Haddy?
Shall I stop? Shall I share, Sarah?
Yes, yeah, can you share?
You need to unshare first, Sarah.
Okay, here we are, Anne.
That's a PDF. It's not the original one, so I'm not sure I can see that. But we'll see. We'll try and work with it. It doesn't seem to be the one. Okay. Okay. I'm going to have to find my own. Haddy, let me control it. Let me control it. And actually, it's not the one was in a PowerPoint, but I will see what I can do.
And this is the same. We've just transferred it to PDF. It's the same slide.
It's a problem. PDFs are very difficult for visually impaired people, but I will try and work on it.
You can share. You're a co-host, so you can share your screen.
Yes, hold on. I have mine open. Yeah. Yes, hold on. Just give us a second. Is that okay? Can everybody see that?
Yeah, that's great.
That's great. Sorry about that. Those few hiccups. I'm just going to the right page. As Haddy said, my name is Anne Mwangi. My normal job is I work as a head of diversity and inclusion for the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, Joseph Rowntree Housing Trust. But I've been working with Haddy to just support this work. I am visually impaired and really honored to be speaking to organizations who work with visually impaired people. So some of the points I'm going to talk about actually came about during the discussions. I'm going to talk about the importance of considering intersectionality in the work that we are doing. And this is because as organizations, we are working with people with different identities. For example, I am I'm a visually impaired person who is also Black, who is also African, who's got a particular faith, cultural perspective. And my experiences are very different, maybe from somebody who is a white, visually impaired woman who's a lesbian. So it's really important to put intersectionality at the core of the work that we do, because we all have different experiences. We all experience the world through a different lens, and it's really important for people to bring themselves either at work or in terms of taking up our services, to feel that they are supported, to feel that they are included. So some of the issues that people face, particularly those from minority ethnic backgrounds or other discriminated or minority groups, these issues around unconscious bias, and these are the issues that are ingrained in our brains, that we make assumptions and judgments about people that sometimes are not rational or even true. And they're fed by the stereotypes we see in the media or in our families or in our society about how we perceive different kinds of people. And you've seen sometimes how particularly BAME people are portrayed in the media, in things like football, in things like movies, or even in the workplace. And that all has got an impact in producing what's the prejudice that people have against different people, whether they're disabled people or people from a BAME background. Again, people from minority ethnic backgrounds disproportionately experience direct and indirect discrimination and harassment and victimization as well. And even more importantly, they experience microaggressions. And just to give you examples of racist microaggressions, when one is in the workplace, people where sight is important, people not paying, giving you eye contact, people excluding you from discussions with their body language, people not including you in their social activities, people making negative and adverse comments about your culture or your language or why are you in this country? So and some of these are supposed to be innocent remarks, but they're kind of remarks that have a real impact on people's lives, and the stress of experiencing microaggressions on a day-to-day basis ultimately actually does cause people so much stress and impact on their health and well-being. And it is actually been documented even by the Equality Human Rights Commission. If you're a Black woman, your life expectancy, because of all the things you experience in life, is much less than that of a white woman. So, and then you all know, working with visually impaired people, all the challenges visually impaired people have, whether they're trying to access information, whether they're trying to use websites that are inaccessible, all the challenges you face when people are trying to just get out of their door and tripping on pavements and all that kind of thing. You're aware of all the kind of challenges people have making travel arrangements or finding a home that's accessible to live in. And then if you can imagine, as a visually impaired person, you're experiencing all this, and then at work as well, you experience systemic and micro discrimination and microaggressions. And you, even when you know that the Equality Act mandates organizations to make reasonable adjustments, some reasonable adjustments are made, others are not made, and on a daily basis, you're struggling to convince people. For example, wherever I've worked, I'm trying to convince people, can I have that document in an accessible format? And all I get day in, day out, apologies, and we forgot, apologies, and we forgot. And that has an impact on your way of working, because you're always expected to catch up, to spend extra time on an evening catching up, because people are not making the adjustments that they're supposed to make on an ongoing basis. So the other barriers that I experience in the workplace around inclusion and there's so many other barriers. Because of time, I won't go into them. But just to say, imagine you're experiencing all those things because of your visual impairment, as an example. And then from the perspective of you being a person of color, then you are experiencing other challenges related to what you look, because people sometimes pretend they don't see color, but they do see it and discriminate on you on the basis of your color. It is well documented through some government even surveys that if you apply for jobs with a name, an African name or an Asian name, you're much less likely to even get an interview. So you're already experiencing that barrier. For me, as a visually impaired person using a white cane, when I step out, even during this time of COVID with my white cane to just get some fresh air, somebody was calling me the N-word. So that is happening in society all the time. So that, and you cannot run away from these things. They are constantly happening all the time. So imagine you have all those issues, the experience as a visually impaired person. In addition, as a person of color, you're experiencing all these other additional issues around the person you are, just because of the color of your skin, and for nothing else, but just because of the color of your skin. So all these issues have such significant impact on individuals' lives. And I think that's why it's so important as leaders of organizations. We bear this in mind. We are really totally committed to eliminating racist discrimination in employment, in service delivery, in the way we challenge people out there when they make racist remarks, so that we build a more inclusive society and a more inclusive organization. I'm now just going to go and talk to you about some of the work that we've been doing with Wilberforce Trust. And in doing this work, just bear in mind the discussion you had in your breakout rooms, and some of the things I've just said you experience when you have multiple identities. So in terms of the Wilberforce Trust, we were contacted actually by Philippa, and she really was keen and demonstrated leadership in this area to work with us to identify some of the challenges around diversity that her organization faces. And we had a few meetings with her organization, which help us to come up with some short-term, medium-term, and long-term priorities that the organization can work on. And then this has led to her team now having some specific actions that they are working on, or they'll be working on in the future, that actually with specific timelines, and also that are costed, to know how much it will cost to deliver some of that work. Because addressing issues of systemic inequalities takes time, takes investment, and that needs to be borne in mind. So some of the examples, some really good examples of some of the things that we've suggested is consultation with the staff, and this will help us understand their experiences of all staff, whether the experience of the BAME staff differ from the experiences of a white staff, and then how the two groups experience the culture of the organization, and therefore is there a piece of work that needs to be done with the culture of the organization. There's also the engagement with managers and leaders to understand what their perception of equality and diversity issues are, and their understanding of these issues. And from this piece, what interventions need to be put in place, whether it is a range of learning and development interventions to upskill them on some of the issues that have been identified. Another example is engaging with board and senior management. And this is to look at some of the things we've already been talking about in terms of improving diversity of and representation at the board level and also at senior management level. Then there's a work around engagement with BAME communities. And some of you mentioned, you know, you don't know how to reach BAME communities. You know, you are not actually accessing them, but you don't know how to do it. And this is a piece of work. And I remember when I worked in local government more than 20 years ago, one of the jobs I did then was actually with a group of community workers going out there and engaging BAME communities. And that work led to a substantial increase in the number of people from BAME backgrounds who started taking up social services and actually they recognized it's that the BAME people are not the barrier. It is our policies, our procedures, and the way we did things that were the barrier. It's us as social services who needed to change the way we did things rather than expecting people out there to change in order to access our services. And I think it's those kind of conversations you need to be having within your organizations. What more do you need to do within your organizations to engage with BAME communities out there? So I'll just move in terms of summary that we've considered the evidence of structural inequalities that exist in our society, but also in the charity sectors where most of us work. We've seen the inequalities through the data. We've also seen that BAME people are highly underrepresented in our board levels. And as leaders, it's really important to recognize that the power is in our hands to make those changes. It is you as leaders who need to go out there and think, how are we going to address these issues? Who do we need to engage to support us to engage those issues? And these are the kind of conversations I think that as leaders you need to be considering. And I would say what the question for you is, when you go away from me here, what are you going to do to improve representation and inclusivity in your organization, not just at the board level, but other levels of the organization? And thank you very much. If we allowed any 2 minutes, we can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. That was really, really good. I think we've run out of time. We've actually taken 4 past, I think 5 past 2. Yeah. But if you do have any questions, I'm sure you all need to go away to other meetings or sessions, but please get in touch with us. We've got the normal general email address, or you can email me directly to haddy.njie@speakupdiversity. If you wish to speak to Anne, please just get in touch with me and then we will further this discussion. But Sarah, Philippa, everyone, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope you found it really interesting and impactful. Thank you.